Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of AZ Update. I'm your host, Anthony Bartolo, joined once again by my co-host, Sarah Lean. Sarah, how's it going?
I'm good, thanks, Anthony. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Sarah, you've been busy. What have you been up to?
Yes, I have been very busy. I have been actually recording some new content. So I've been recording some videos for a series that we do on our own YouTube channel called Azure Unblogged, where we talk to someone from an Azure product team and just interrogate them a little bit about their product and try and have that informal chat. So I've been filming a few of them. I've done one on security. I did one on Azure Stack HCI, and I've got a few more lined up for the new year as well. So that's been one of the things that I've been working on recently, Anthony.
And that's awesome. You're bringing that series back, again, based on our audience feedback in terms of what they want to hear about. What's great about these episodes is that they're short, they're less than 15 to 20 minutes, and they really go in really quickly into 300 level in respect to the technology that you're covering. So we're going to be talking about the Azure Stack HCI today, but you actually got to sit with Matt McSpirit, which is really cool, and he's one of the product managers, to provide some insight in terms of how this came to be. Now that it's GA, what does that mean for everybody, and what support Microsoft is putting behind this solution?
Yes,
which is really cool.
Yes, I actually have to say that it was a very pinch me moment when I interviewed Matt, because Matt is someone that I used to watch as a customer when he presented on Microsoft Mechanics and stuff. So it was very cool to actually interview somebody that I have watched from afar and admired. So yeah, that was a pretty cool moment for me, to be honest.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like the beauty of what we get to do is that we get to interact with those that when we were younger or when before our careers here at Microsoft, to interact with those that we used to watch and learn from, right? And now we're learning from them in first person, and it's awesome that in creating these videos you're then able to share what you're learning from Matt with everybody else, and then everybody else also has the ability to chime in and provide some feedback to that as well. So definitely, if you're you want to check out this video, Sarah has the GitHub video on the blog. You've also launched there was a security video that was just launched, the one with Yuri.
Yes.
So those are on the blog as well. The Azure Stack HCI one will be on the blog shortly, but if you want to check it out now, it's actually on our YouTube channel, on the IT Ops Talk YouTube channel. So you'll see that soon. The other thing I really wanted to cover really quickly with you was yesterday's announcement of IE11 no longer being supported in Azure Portal as of March 2021. And we were talking about this. Offline in terms of who still uses IE, right? and we start to joke. I traded in my AOL desk to use Netscape, and then went from Netscape to IE, and just dating myself. But there are a lot of organizations that are still using IE, and there's a lot of security policies and procedures in place that state that they have to use IE for specific reasons, right? So there is still the need out there. There's a lot of conversation on Reddit, specifically on the Azure subreddit, in regards to a lot of people actually saying, well, what am I supposed to do now? Because my company's policy and mandates that I have to use IE in order to access the portal to do specific tasks. I wanted to make sure that in regards to the announcement, people understand that the support for IE11 in Azure Portal is the only thing that's being stopped as of March 2021. The functionality of IE11 will still live on as long as Windows is a product, unless we hear otherwise. That is still going to continue on. The other thing I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of as well was, if you are using Microsoft Edge, of course, will be supported by Azure Portal. You cannot use Microsoft Edge in IE mode in the Azure Portal. That too will not be supported, because you do have that functionality, which was something that was requested by the masses in regards to the browser utilization. You can use Microsoft Edge in a mode that's specifically an IE11 mode for those that have the older internet sites that require access to information. That will not be supported in Azure Portal as well. So you can't extend the longevity of IE11 inside of the portal. You have to use Microsoft Edge. Now we've been using Edge for a while, and it recently changed its engine to a Chromium engine. I've been enjoying it, and I do have a backup browser. I have Firefox as my backup browser. Do you have a backup browser, Sarah?
Yes. Well, I recently rebuilt my laptop, so I don't think I have a backup browser installed. I think the only browser I have installed at the moment is Edge, so I'll probably need to have a look at that, because you never know when you need that backup browser, unfortunately.
Well, and it's even from a compatibility standpoint, because, as much as Edge has the compatibility of most applications, I've filmed a couple podcasts recently where the partner that I was filming with, the solution that they were using wasn't compatible. So, that's why I have that backup browser, because it covers most the best of both worlds and what have you. And so I'll light up Firefox and use it in that way. But Edge for me has been pretty stable and has been pretty quick, I'll be quite honest, not just because I'm a Microsoft employee. But it's a big difference from what we experienced in the IE11 days. And I don't know if you remember, Sarah, that, sometimes it was a lengthy process for a website to come up, and it wasn't a internet connectivity piece. It was IE was built as layers. So when they had IE7, 8, 9, it was layered on top of the existing platform, and it wasn't a net new browser every time there was a new launch. And that caused a lot of latency as well. So the whole breakaway from that with Edge has been refreshing. It's been a great experience. And so if you haven't checked it out yet, do so now, especially since the support for IE11 will come to an end March 2021. Cool.
Awesome.
Shall we continue on with the news?
Yes, please do.
All right. So, tell me how you really feel. All right, let's go on. First up is yourself, and it's the new Azure Stack announcements.
Yeah, so yesterday we saw the announcement of Azure Stack HCI actually go generally available, or GA if you want to shorten that down. So that means that it's now in a production supported state, so you can roll it out and start to use it. And I'm hoping that lots of people are going to be adopting this and going down this route. From the chat I had from Matt and some of the customers he's been working with in the preview functionality, they're really excited about what it can offer. And Azure Stack HCI is an Azure product, and it is part of the Azure Stack family as well, but it's working in conjunction with Windows Server, Windows Admin Center, Azure Arc as well. So it's very much part of our hybrid story. So if you're looking to replace something on-prem, maybe one of those branch servers or remote offices that you have, then Azure Stack HCI can actually help you do that. And the way Matt explained it to me was that you can run it on validated hardware from one of our partners, and then you can actually host virtual machines on it. So it could be your Windows or your Linux virtual machines on it, or you could even look to extend Kubernetes on this Azure Stack HCI. And then there's some functionality as well with some of the Azure data services as well. So Azure SQL can run on it as well. So very cool, very excited to see where this goes. And Matt actually told me that you can run a bit of this. You can actually test it on Azure. So if you don't have any hardware to test Azure Stack HCI and you want to find out a bit more about it, you can actually use it on Azure, and he's wrote a guide to help you do that. So I think I'll be kicking the tires of that over the next few weeks to try and understand a bit more about it. But I'm really excited about where this can take our customers and help them extend their Azure offerings onto the on-prem environment as well.
So a couple of the partners that support Azure Stack HCI, we have Data we have Dell Technologies, and we have Lenovo. I love that you can do that. You can spin up an Azure Stack HCI instance on Azure to do your testing. That's really cool. To do your testing in terms of your implementation and what that could mean for your organization. From a management standpoint, I was told that Azure Arc could also come into play in terms of a management tool for your HCI implementation.
Yeah, so The Azure Arc installation can happen at the kind of bottom layer of your Azure Stack HCI. So you can use Azure Arc to manage each of your Azure Stack HCI clusters and roll down things like Azure Policy to make sure everything's consistent. And then again, if you're running virtual machines or Kubernetes or data services, you can start to use Azure Arc on those individual servers or individual services. So there's two ways you could use Azure Arc. And I think I really like that. I think the fact that you can use Azure Arc at the kind of bottom layer of Azure Stack HCI to make sure that everything's consistent and manageable is quite exciting as well. So yeah, definitely have a look at how you can do that with, again, Windows Admin Center helping you to manage some of that as well and make it a lot easier for the management blade.
And what's interesting is the amount of conversation that happens in regards to what is the difference between Azure Stack HCI and full-on Windows Server, right? And the whole, when I'm deploying this to my organization, what's the best choice? You know, we talk a lot about hybrid utilization. We talk a lot about, you know, the needs of organizations, healthcare, financial, in terms of specific data has to reside on premises. Still, you know, put your best foot forward in terms of what your policies or your ISO standards requirements are. But the Azure Stack HCI makes offering makes it a lot easier for that adoption of cloud while still, you know, having that on-premises implementation requirement fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Azure Stack HCI takes advantage of the best bits that we all love within Windows Server. So things like Hyper-V, but it doesn't include things like the fax server that you might have had to have on your Windows Server installation. So it has those familiar components within Windows Server, but it doesn't have those ones that we don't really want on some of our infrastructure as well. So I think it's pretty cool. I think it will be easy that way to adopt it because it is a familiar platform. It is kind of based on Windows Server with all the good bits of it and some of the, I don't want to say bad bits because fax servers are still important, and I think in 2020 we found that some companies are still using them, but it's not got all the additional stuff that you might not need if you are using it as a virtualization platform, basically.
It's interesting, you know, you're correct. There's a lot of fax servers still in play, especially in insurance, right? Like the whole submission of documentation to insurance, it's still fax in the most part. There has been a bit of a transition using your smartphone to take imagery to submit as opposed to using the fax machine, but still valid. But so if you require fax services, you can't use Azure Stack HCI. But if you want that quick adoption in the cloud, do check this out, and it's something that would be of interest. Next up in the news, staying on the Azure Stack piece, is the Azure Stack Edge offering. And this is specifically tailored towards IoT. Now the functionality has been made available for you to run your K8s, your Kubernetes implementation, or your virtual machines on your IoT device. Sarah, when was the last time you deployed Windows Server as an example to a bare bones machine without virtualizing?
Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Anthony, to be honest.
Right, and why do we do that? Why do we do the virtualization piece? It's the whole aspect of using the resources as required in its best ability, right? For the longest time on the IoT side, we weren't doing that. We were doing a native bare bones implementation of an OS. Sometimes it's Windows, sometimes it's Linux or Python or what have you. Well, Python more of a coding scenario, but the whole aspect of deploying an OS on the device natively, bare bones on an IoT device. We now have the functionality to use Kubernetes or virtual machines. Kubernetes has actually gone GA. Virtual machines is actually still in preview, public preview. But it's the availability now to run these OSs in these applications in a container on an IoT device and being managed by the Azure Portal. So you no longer require third-party applications. The IoT suite also has that availability for management, but to simplify a lot of the functionality, making it available directly through the Azure Stack implementation for management of these devices. So cool. Now I can virtualize the application on the IoT device itself, and I can push down directly from the portal when an update has occurred. You still have the automation rules and capabilities that are available in IoT Suite to deploy to these machines as well, but the native integration now, having that virtual machine or that container running on the device natively, and having the intelligence made available on the device so that if there's a lack of connectivity or if there isn't a requirement to capture all that information to push back out to the cloud to save in terms of data transfer, you have that availability with Azure Stack Edge. But now the additional benefit of really harnessing the computing power on these devices in a virtualized plane, which is really cool.
It sounds cool. I must admit, Anthony, my IoT and container knowledge is not up to scratch. It's definitely not at the level you are, but certainly what you've just explained sounds very cool and very useful to lots of people.
Oh, I assure you, I'm learning as I go in terms of IoT. I'm not an expert either. I really thank Paul DiCarlo for bringing me on the journey on the IoT learning that I've had thus far and doing a lot of experimentation. But that's just it, right? We do what we do, and we learn what we learn is what we're passionate about, right? If it's something that is of interest of ours, we're going to dive into it. And you know, for me, the whole aspect of, you know, as a kid playing with Lego and building stuff and then ripping apart my toys and taking out the motors and making my Lego moves. Like that's my parents' worst nightmare. I paid
they must have loved
$100 for that remote control car that you just destroyed and you built something else in the Lego. That's awesome, but I just paid $100 for this car. So, you know, I have a lot of toys I've disassembled behind me. That's probably why half the stuff behind me doesn't work. But the whole aspect of, you know, for me in IoT was the whole automation piece, right? Making a Lego car go with a remote control, that was awesome. And now you put a camera in front of that so it doesn't hit into a wall. Sounds simple, but the logic behind it is so cool, right? And, you know, that logic translates into a whole bunch of things from machine learning to cognitive services, not just IoT. And for me, it's exciting in the fact that it all branches out, right? And then you're seeing the inclusion of those type of services in like security detection and what have you, right? So for me, that's what excites me, and the fact that I'm building something with my hands, I'm building something that I can touch. That's the mechanic in me. That's pretty much why I go down the IoT route. Shall we continue on?
Yes.
Next up, producer Pierre's like, can you move along, please? All right, next up. News from Universe 2020. Sarah, this is all you.
Yeah, so I have to admit, and some people have probably heard me say this before, I never thought GitHub was something that I needed to pay attention to as an IT pro. Over the last few years, I have changed my opinion, and I think I use GitHub quite a bit. I think I probably use it at least once a day, if I'm truly honest. And after I had my chat with Martin Woodward, who is head of developer relations over at GitHub, he was telling me and inspiring me to actually have a look at GitHub Universe, which is their annual conference where they drop a lot of announcements, and they did certainly drop a lot of announcements this week. We saw the inclusion of dark mode within GitHub, so you can turn on dark mode if that's something that you like. It looks pretty cool. I did turn it on my environment, and it does look very good. They also did a few other announcements, things around discussions. So we now have, and I think it's in beta, so it might not be rolled out to every repository, but you now have a functionality where you can have a discussion with your team or the community around your discussion, your repository, with the code. And that can help keep that kind of conversation in that place, instead of you wondering whether you had a conversation in email, on WhatsApp, on Teams, on somewhere else about that project and where you are. And I think that's going to be pretty cool for people to collaborate on a lot of open source projects that obviously live on GitHub. And the last one that I want to highlight is that for a while now, we've been able to contribute as individuals, give some money to some of the open source projects that we all support and love and use. And a lot of companies have said that it's a really arduous process for them to do individual purchase orders for every open source project that they want to support. We saw the announcement at GitHub Universe this week where they're allowing companies to actually contribute to these open source projects. And then the billing actually goes into their kind of GitHub bill. So if they have like GitHub Enterprise, all of that contribution they've made to those open source projects actually gets billed through their monthly bill for their GitHub Enterprise type bill. So it makes it really easy for companies to start to support some of the open source projects as well. So, and I'm sure there's tons of other announcements that I've completely missed, but those were the ones that caught my eye. Yep, I think producer Pierre tell me that everybody is talking about auto merge PRs, and I did see that. I haven't quite figured out how that works or what that actually does yet, but certainly that does sound like a cool announcement as well.
And that's what I love about GitHub is that new collaboration spot for those that are building out solutions. And thanks for those that could contribute to GitHub in open source for other organizations to build upon. I love the fact that people can go forward and build upon other people's codes and share their ideas in terms of how to moving the code forward. I am a novice at GitHub, and I've been trying to learn. I'm actually watching a lot of your tutorials and your articles, which have been great. You did a great, introduction to GitHub that I still use as my reference sheet when I want to use it. It's something where it's once you get used to it, the possibilities are endless in terms of the collaboration that you can accomplish within your organization or building out for other solutions. And it's something where it's very inspiring to see how people participate and hey, maybe you should do this another way in terms of the way the code set's being put forth. I love that. It's something where you can learn and you can share it simultaneously, your ideas with everybody else and them with you. It's such a fantastic platform, and it's awesome that you're running with this. It's a passion of yours to enable others through this platform. Awesome that you brought this to our attention, which is really cool.
Yep. Absolutely. It's something that I think we have to all kind of learn and dip our toes into a little bit. I don't think you need to be an expert. I'm certainly not an expert on Git or GitHub, but I know enough to be dangerous, unfortunately, Anthony.
We all are, right? That's how we break things. But then we learn how to fix them after, oh, shoot, we broke it. So now we've got to fix it now. Let's continue on with the news. Next up is the GA of Digital Twins. So we're going to dive back into IoT again. But this is a big deal only because this is so prudent or so important for a lot of organizations that are deploying IoT. And by the way, IoT is for all walks of life. My daughter, actually, proud of her, she just did a project. She was tasked with automating a solution for the pandemic to ensure that people stay apart but can still stay together. So she created a solution that does this is Proud Papa here, that allows for the serving of people their drinks via a robot. So the robot will actually drive down the bar, ensuring that people are spaced apart. And instead of having a bartender pour the drinks, the robot will pour the drinks, which is really cool. But there's a lot of testing around that, and you could imagine that certain drinks would be a certain expense, and you don't want to test it with those expensive drinks. So how about virtualizing the robot and its travel patterns across the bar to feed other people? That's in essence what Digital Twins is all about. It takes real-world data from the implementation of what the robots are actually doing and what they're delivering or what the IoT device is capturing in terms of information, and then creating a virtualized instance of that same plotting of data to then be tested upon in terms of what about if the bar was this long instead of this long? What about if there was only 6 people being served instead of 10? What would that mean in terms of the changing of specific variables? So that when building out the IoT solution, they don't have to do that in a real-world instance. They could do it in a virtualized plane, which is constantly updating from an existing implementation. For factories, car manufacturers, you name it, the ability to virtualize an entire assembly line. And then have the ability to do testing on how do we make this more efficient? What can we do to, ensure that the workers are safe? What can we do to, increase productivity without affecting the actual production until it's been verified that this is going to be something of importance? This is where, Digital Twins comes into play, is why it's so important. We have that in the developer world too, in regards to I'm spinning up from an IT perspective, I'm spinning up a developer plane or developer environment that emulates what we have from a existing implementation of architecture, so that they don't mess up production and have the ability to go and test out their theories or try out their applications before publishing that application for others to use, right? It's the same premise, but doing this in an IoT spec, which is really cool. Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, sounds great. Again, Anthony, you've kind of talked right over my head about IoT, but it does sound like it's a pretty cool implementation, and I do love to see the stuff that people invent. I'm very jealous of them. I'm definitely not an IoT inventor, but all of this sounds awesome.
Well, the biggest thing with this is that from a perspective of an IT professional, the ability to create this virtualized plane as a digital twin allows developers to work on their code in terms of their IoT devices so that they don't take down production. That's the biggest thing here, right? Yeah. Because when production goes down, the IT department's the first one that's rung up and say, hey, the assembly line has stopped. Right. Yep. And so, and then you're going to go through, okay, what happened? Did they, the developers push out code, what have you? in this scenario here, if you're providing this virtualized plane as a digital twin, the developers can go forward and really work on the solution without affecting production until it's been verified that, hey, this is not going to break anything, this is what it's going to enhance, then it can be deployed by IT, right? Which is an important piece, especially if you're looking at multi-million-dollar companies and assembly lines building product.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to take down production. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. So really quickly, we're going to say hi to those in the chat room. Paul Jensen, how's it going? We have Andrew McCollum here. We have Jared Shockley. Jared Shockley is producer Steve over at Patch and Switch. Nice to have you, bud. That's awesome that you're here. We have Mateus Matheny. He's asking, what is IE? So we've got somebody pretty young in the chat that has not used IE before. And of course, producer Pierre is talking as IT Ops Talk. Thank you, everyone, for your conversations in the chat. A lot of discussion about IE11 and its use. We have a lot of talk about Lego now in regards to IoT, which is really awesome. For me, that was it, right? Like I really enjoyed as a kid playing with Lego. The pieces that they have now are so crazy in regards to what you can actually accomplish and what you can build. I've seen people, you know, the whole YouTube videos where these people have these massive rooms full of stuff. I'll be honest, I've been looking at the Technique series. I do have the EV3 robot, which is really cool, and I built out a lot of cool things out of that, and it's a great starter just for kids to get into coding and to building out these robots. And it's all block coding, which is really cool. So there's a action and operation via blocks as opposed to a full-on coding suite. So awesome if you get a chance to play with that stuff. It's really cool. Let's continue on. So now we're going to talk about events really quickly. So it's been a fortnight. That means our friends at Patch and Switch and Jared, or producer Steve, will be there in about an hour and a half time to be on Twitch and to share with the world in terms of their take on technology. So do check them out. The festive tech calendar, Sarah, you, Pierre, and I believe Thomas are on this one.
Yes, so we're taking part in the Festive Tech Calendar on the 16th of December on our YouTube channel, so IT Ops Talk. We will be doing an Ask Me Anything. I think it's scheduled for 3 p.m. UK time, and you can ask us anything Christmassy. You can ask us how many Philips Hue lights that we all have, because we're all obsessed with them, or you can ask us about technology, and we will try and answer all your questions. So please do join us for that session.
And a Philips Hue light is an IoT device. Just saying.
Yes.
Just saying. Speaking of IoT, one last time. So also a reminder that in January, there's the all-around Azure, a beginner's guide to IoT to check out as well. Again, you don't have to be a developer to play in IoT. I'm not, and it's really cool to check out the platform and build stuff and automate things, right? Really, really awesome to do. Last but not least, our Microsoft Learn module of the week. We'll bring on producer Pierre, and this one was a very big one. It's a very popular one.
Yes.
Time if harnessed properly. If you've not dabbed into PowerShell, this is an awesome tool to get familiar with. Don't have to start, with multiple lines of code right out of the gate. Understanding the premise behind what PowerShell can bring to your architecture in terms of implementation is an awesome thing, and this is a great module to learn on how to do that. So that's the module, Microsoft Learn module of the week. Got 2 minutes left. Sarah Lean, so awesome to have you on the show again. How do people get a hold of you?
You can find me as TechieLass on Twitter, and I'll be blogging over at itopstalk.com this week as well. So be sure to check that out.
And make sure to check out her video series on the IT Ops Talk YouTube channel as well, Azure Unblogged. Awesome to have you on the show. Hopefully have you on the show again very soon. If you want to get a hold of producer Pierre, you can get a hold of him on Twitter at Wired Canuck. And if you want to get a hold of me on Twitter for some reason, it's at Wireless Life. And I too produce content on the IT Ops Talk blog. If there's anything you'd like to see written, let us know. We're happy to write that for you and get that answered question. Get the question answered, put it backwards, put the question answered in regards to what you need to accomplish at your organization. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week.